Good afternoon, all, and thank you for joining us on webinar 10 of our BIOtechnical Advocacy Lab. Today, we will be discussing harnessing grassroots data with a conversation led by Mike Panetta. Mike is an award-winning public affairs campaign strategist who specializes in using the internet and social media for creative issue advocacy and grassroots activism. He is a founding partner at Beekeeper Group. I'll pass it over to you, Mike.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. I'm going to be talking today about harnessing the power of grassroots data. As just a quick introduction, like we said, I'm Mike Panetta. I'm one of the founding partners at Beekeeper Group, and we work with a lot of clients on their advocacy campaigns, focusing on digital. So we do a lot of this work day in, day out. So happy to share some of our best practices with you all today. So just quickly, the things I'll be talking about today are what is grassroots data? What do we mean by that? Assessing what grassroots data you have, and then coming up with plans to fill in the gaps of the data that you don't have, and looking at the goals that you're setting for yourselves and in terms of advocacy and what you need to get there. And then we're going to look at ways to go beyond the data that you have already and how you can grow your database of activists and get new grassroots data, new activists, new people, more information on who you have, and then talk through a couple of third-party tools that are out there that can help with that. So that's our plan for today. Hopefully this is what you signed up for. So let's dive right into it. So when I talk about grassroots data, what we mean by that are the information you have about your advocates, beyond just an email address. These are all things that can be used to drive targeted action. So the more you know about somebody, the better you can communicate with them about the issues that matter to them, and the calls to action can be more specific and more likely to actually be completed. So this is what we're going to talk about today, how we can get better grassroots data from our activists. So what are some of the data points that exist out there? So when we talk about grassroots data, what I mean by that are both the active and the passive things you can get from your grassroots efforts. So we talk about things like that are passive, like what emails were opened, what links were clicked in those emails. Those are the things that we're just collecting from people as they interact with our campaigns. But we also want to know, like, what actions have they taken in the past? What issues do they care about? They've sent messages to Congress, they signed petitions, they posted on social media. These are all things that fill in a data profile and make it more rich. We also want to know about the demographic information about the advocates. So their age, their gender, zip code, street address, legislative districts, etc. Things like that are also things we want to collect. And then we also collect things that people give to us just from filling out additional forms or surveys, other things that we ask them. All these things build up a data profile. And these are the type of things that we talk about when we mean data points, is going beyond just the email address and building a richer profile. So these are some of the basic things we talk about when we're talking about collecting information on people. There's other things such as whether they're a donor, whether their past history with the organization. A lot of that gets specific to the organization, but these are some of the main things that we're talking about. So here we go. So why this is important is we're seeing in the work that we do, we're seeing a revival of email campaigns. I mean, it used to be a big component of, and always has been, but it's sort of been overshadowed by social media over the last several years. There's a renewed interest in growing email lists and using email, because social media we've run into issues over the past year or so, especially with the latest campaign environment we're in, where public affairs and advocacy messages or posts are being deprioritized by some platforms. It's been harder to advertise against those issues. There's always a third party company that has an algorithm that sort of dictates who's going to see what and when they're going to see it. Where email is more of a one-to-one relationship. You send a message to somebody, and hopefully it gets into their inbox, and they and to take action on it. So that's why we're seeing a revived focus on these email campaigns and building up your own grassroots data that you own and you control and you can use to reach out to your audiences whenever you need to. So getting better grassroots data allows for better segmentation of messaging and allows for better emails to land in the box. So I like to remind people that when we talk about grassroots data, it's more than just harvesting email addresses. That's just the start. That just gets you hopefully even in the inbox. We need to have richer and deeper profiles, and that's what we're going to talk about. Because we have more data means we can have better tailored messages. So what I mean by that is you're able to you don't have to send every email to every email address in your list. You can have sub audiences within your larger list based on what's available in that user's data profile. Again, the more you know, the more specific you can be. So your goal here is to send messages to the people who are most likely to open them and engage with them, or people who are in a key demographic for the issue that you're trying to move. It's important to collect this data so you have it, so you have the option to send focused messages this way. It keeps your list informed and engaged. That's what it's all about. If you have a big email list and you're just sending things out to everybody and nobody's opening them and nobody's clicking them, are you really doing anything to move the needle on issues that you care about or inform the audiences that are under that you're trying to inform? Going on to the next slide here. So why does this matter? Part of it is because the good data is not just for communications. Having good segmentation of your data is not just for a better communication experience. It's for getting this basic deliverability. Good email delivery is critical for what you're trying to do, trying to get in the inbox. And we've seen a real change in what's considered spam these days by a lot of the people that process email. It's not just unwanted email. It's whether or not it was acted upon. So if your emails don't have any engagements, if they're not opened, if they're not clicked, even if not reported as spam, if platforms, the major email platforms where you send things out, if they are seeing that your email list is not active and engaged, they're going to start putting those emails into things like the promotion tabs, the spam filters, the spam folders, because they're not seen as something that is wanted by the end user. So it's really critical to really tailor your messages and get them to the right people so they're extremely relevant to them. That means not sending everything to everybody. So the first step here is to assess what you know and think about where you want to go when it comes to your email data. So before we dive into it, I like to think big picture. What is the goal? What do you need your grassroots for, and what data do you need from them to achieve it? So think about what your overall grassroots, what's the reason for your grassroots program? What are some of the issues that you care about? What do you need from your grassroots to be able to do that? Are you looking to move legislation? Are you trying to change regulations? Are you trying to raise general awareness? Is it at the federal level? Is it at the state level? Like, where are you active? And then look at the data that you have and think to yourself, do I have what I need from my data to be able to achieve these goals? If I just have an email list, I know nothing else about these people. If I have their email list and maybe their first name and their last name, I really don't know much more about these people. So what I would need, what you need in this situation is, if you're doing legislative advocacy, you need basic things like full address and congressional districts, so you know where people live, so you can target people based on their congressional districts. It'd be great to know what issues they care about, so you're able to focus in that way and send messages just to people who said they've cared about a specific issue. So starting with that, diving into what you already know. So some of the things that we look at if we're working with a group that has an email list and we're coming in sort of new and assessing their program, we want to know basically about the health of their email list. How many people are on there? How many people do you have as an email that are on an emailable list? How active are they? When was the last time they opened an email? When was the last time they clicked through on something? What percentage of people are bouncing? Is there some sort of data profile that we can figure out from the people that are on your list? These are the things that, when we look at it, we want to assess the sort of the health of the overall list of grassroots data, what we know about them, how active they've been in the past, because lots of groups we work with, they let their list go dormant. They don't send things out very often. They don't do good list hygiene. So they don't, they need a little bit of, just some tender love and care on what they have already before they can take it to the next level and start to expand on what they know. So we work with them to figure out what is the overall health of this email list, what kind of people do we have on there, another thing is, where do they live? Do we have any sort of sense of where we're spread out across the country? Are we all concentrated in one state? Are we in the right congressional districts? These are the things that we think through when we work with them. So then we talk about what are the gaps to fill. So, these are, if you just started with an email list and you need to fill things out, these are the things we look for. We try to get their full name. We try to get postal address, zip code. We like to figure out what is the source of this email address. How did they get them? Did they sign up themselves? Did they opt in? Were they uploaded? Were they part of another event? Why are you on the list, and what's the relationship with the organization? That matters a lot in terms of deliverability and activity from these people. Do we know what issues matter to them? Do we know their social media profiles? Have we collected any other personal stories from them? I'll talk more about that later in the presentation about how ways to do that, and what a great opportunity it is to grow the data you have on your people if you collect personal stories, and then whether or not they're donors. That's a different class of people as well. So all these sort of things, all these points here allow you to customize the messages that you send out. So once you sort of assess your overall goals, what you need from your grassroots data, what gaps you have, the next thing is to make a plan to have better data and to start to fill this out. So the first thing one of the first things we do, like I said, is remove the hard bounces. These are people, a lot of programs do this for you already, but depending on what systems you're using, if you're sending out emails and they're bouncing back and they're undeliverable, make sure you clear those people out from your list. I mean, it's everybody likes to have a big email list, but if you have a large number of undeliverables on there, it's not going to help anybody, and it's going to actually really impact your deliverability with some of the major internet providers and senders. So make sure you scrub your lists of people who aren't doing anything. Also, beyond just the hard bounces, look at people who haven't done anything. If they haven't opened or clicked or engaged in your emails in a long time, 6 months to a year, depending on how often you send things out, they need to go too, because they're or put into a different program where they're not getting emails from you very often, because they are not engaging with you. They are not opening your emails. They are not doing anything with them. Again, they're driving down your rates. You want to focus on having grassroots data of people who care about your issues, who are engaged with your organization, and who are acting upon the things you sent. It's better to have a smaller list of very engaged activists than a large list where a big percentage of them don't do anything. And then we set up to, once we sort of clear this out, we set up sort of a cascading calls to action to get additional information to fill in that data profile. So that's the next section we're going to talk about here, is how do you do that? And I'm going to walk through what is a common example scenario is where you have a large email list and you don't have as much supporting data or context to really make it as valuable as a grassroots tool as it could be. And what do you need to tune it up? What are the things you can do to clean up the data, make it work better for your efforts, and get more information? I mean, lots of times groups are doing this, but it's always good to take a step back and see some ways that could be done better. So some of this we just talked about. So before you start, what is the current? Just I won't repeat what I just said, but sort of get a baseline of where you were. Last email sent. What are your open rates? What are your click-through rates? What are the sources of these emails? Sort of get a baseline of where you are and where you need to go with that data. So some of the things we do to grow, excuse me, to grow data is one is we set up an automated series of emails that sort of have a cascading list of cascading effect of actions that we ask people to do. The way this is set up is we work to have what is sometimes it's called the drip campaign, where you have you can set up emails that go out that ask different things, and then the next email is sent based on either a time frame or an action. So, for example, if we were working with the group and we wanted to help them, increase the data the grassroots data that they have on their list, we would send an email out and say, okay, we have this great list, but we don't know everybody's congressional district, and that's really important to us. So we would set up a campaign that would go out to people and try to get, maybe start off by asking them what issues, a quick survey, what issues they care about. Okay, we know you care about these issues. So after sending out an email, so then we would have another email that was timed to go out maybe a week or two after they tell us what issues they cared about, with a call to action on that issue, asking people to sign a petition or send a message to their member of Congress. Then we're asking them, the first email we got what issues they cared about. The next email we're going to ask about what their address is and to get matched a congressional district. So, and then after they send that, maybe we send another email that has now share a story with us, or now tell your friends. So we set up a list of an automated series where it's every time somebody does something, there's a timed action or a triggered action where they're going to get another email, and it's going to ask them for more information. So it's sort of, we're sort of leading them down a path of engagement. We only started maybe with an email address and a first name. Now we're asking for a quick survey. Hey, what are the issues you care about? Well, we want to hear from you. What's important? Let us know. And then every step along the way, we're pulling them a little deeper into our database and getting more information from them. So there's different varieties of things you can do here as part of this automated series. It doesn't have to be an automated series, but this is something that we find useful. It could also just be planned actions on your part that go out in a singular email. So a couple of things we do. We talk about doing surveys. Like I said, this is a great way to build up it's an easy step to build up some information about the people in your database. Here are a couple of things you can ask about: issues they care about, what their age, occupation, how they prefer to be communicated with. All this that we're asking here, everything I'm talking about in the next few slides, these are things that are going into someone's data profile that then you can use to segment your list and go back out to them based on what you know about them. So what they care about, how old they are, occupation. These are things where you can tailor your messaging based on it. So surveys are a great way to start building up some data on people, data for the people in your Grassroots database. Next thing is petitions and actions, and this is maybe a little step higher. We're asking people to actually weigh in on an issue. A letter to a decision maker is a great way to complete your data profile, because you need to ask street address, city, state, zip code, which a lot of the systems use to then match you to congressional districts. So that's another way to build up a lot of information on somebody, because you get where they live, you get their congressional districts. Most of these systems also pull in their state and local state House and Senate districts as well. And you're getting a lot, and you're also getting information about the actions, about the issues that they care about. If they're active, if they took an action on a specific issue, you also can tag them in your databases. They cared about X issue based on whatever letter it was. One thing we use this for a lot as well is when you have a list and you're not sure if you have a lot of detractors on your list. Maybe they signed up because they want to know more about your organization, but they don't support you. They just want to keep tabs on you. Having people take an action like this before they can do something else and get additional information is a great sort of barrier to stopping people from getting more involved in the organization when they really have no intention of helping you. So sometimes we do this as a way to sort of, it's like sort of a roadblock. Like if you want to get more information, or if you want to get access to this materials, first step is sign this petition or send a message to your letter of Congress, because people will stop there because they don't want to be on record for supporting something if they don't. So that's just something to keep in mind. These are great tools to both collect information, but also sort of weed out people who may not be 100% supporting your organization. And then another thing we like to do is ask people to collect stories. So this is a really high level ask. So this is not one of the first things we ask people, obviously, but again, this is all things that we're doing to build a richer data profile on the people that we have in our Grassroots database. So if somebody's already signed up for the newsletter, they've already taken action to a member of Congress, they've already recruited some friends, they've already done a number of things, these people are committed to your organization, they're committed to the issue. This is a great next ask for this, is to ask people to share a personal story about why whatever the issue is, why it matters to them personally, why they're involved, and how it affects their daily lives. So these stories are great for grassroots for grassroots activity, because they can be shared with media. I mean, obviously you need to get that sign off and that permission, but they can be shared with media, they can be shared with elected officials, especially if we're talking, like we said before, if we're able to get people down to congressional districts, legislative districts, collect stories from specific legislative districts. If you have an ask into that member of Congress or that senator, and you come armed with some personal stories from that district, that is golden for trying to move the needle within a congressional office. So building up these data profiles allow you to then make those higher level asks, because you know who these people are, you know more about them. If you just had an email address list and you sent it out to and just asked people to share their personal stories, I mean, you're not going to get that much in return, because you don't have that sort of relationship yet. You don't know anything about these people. It's sort of like asking somebody to marry you on the first date. You haven't had that courtship of other actions and things you know about each other before you ask them to do something like sharing a personal story, because it's a very obviously personal ask. So, but it's really golden if you're able to get some of these, especially if you can apply them strategically against districts and legislators that we're trying to move the needle. So the things I just talked about were the surveys, the petitions. I want to show you one example before I get to the next section. This is a example of something we built out for a couple of clients. One on the left is the American Heart Association. One on the right is the the Credit Union National Association. These are some story collection tools and story display tools that we've built for them. People can record a story right from the webcam, right from their computer or from their mobile phone, and it collects you can see we collect email address, first name, last name, address to get matched to congressional districts. They're able to collect these stories and build up a story bank, and then like the credit unions on the right, they actually display them too by state as well. This is just a snapshot from one's website. So there's some pretty cool things you can do, but this is possible because they knew about these people. They didn't just have the email address, they already knew where they lived, they already knew they were issue champions, the people they reached out to. So it's a different level ask than just going to a blind email list trying to get this. They had that information. So the things that we just talked about, the surveys, the sharing stories, the taking action, these are things that are great to build up a list, build up the data from the people that you already know. The next section I'm going to talk about are ways to expand it it also helps build for the data. It also helps build data from the people you know, but it also it helps you expand sort of the universe of people that you're working with. These are sort of recruitment tools as well as tools to grow your database. So ways to grow your database. So I want to start off with a couple of don'ts here. First of all, we've worked with groups that have said, hey, I want to buy this email list, or there's this vendor that's offering me 20,000 people who said they care about XYZ issue, and it's pennies per email, and I'm going to do it. And I was like, that's not really bad idea. Buying email lists is a great way to ruin your sender reputation. Is a great way to be put on spam lists. Any email list that is purchased just like that is not going to be reliable. It's not going to move the needle on your issues. It's just going to raise the number of people in your email list and do really nothing else, and everything else is usually pretty harmful. So basic rule of thumb: if people don't ask to be put on your email list, don't put them there. Because a lot of these tools, like a MailChimp and some of the other vendors, you need to prove in a lot of ways. You got to need to prove that these people opted in to be on this email list. And if you just show up with this list of that you purchased and try to dump it into MailChimp, for example, it's not going to let you. So, and the thing is, there's no easy way to do this to grow your list. It takes time. It takes strategy and time to get more people into your database and then grow them once you get them in there. But there are ways to do it. Here are a few things that we've done for clients to get this done. So a lot of what we do is working with groups with their websites, and we've been experimenting and had some success in getting these time triggers or actions on websites popping up asking for an email address. I mean, lots of times people just have sign up on our email address or sign up for more information on your organization's website, and you'll get some traffic through there. But we're finding that there's a lot more value when it's something that comes up later, sort of as an interstitial that comes up after they've been on the website for a little while, after they've scrolled around for a little while. So it doesn't hit them right away. But it's something that comes up as they've already showed some interest by scrolling around your website, a subtle message, a sort of scroll up window that asks for an email address. And also we've found success when there's something of value that that somebody may want from your website, whether that's a report or presentation or access to a webinar, collecting an email address. And it can be just an email address here, because remember, we've talked about ways to increase that data profile, but just to get someone in the door, getting that email address is a great way to do. It's a great way to get that email address by providing something of value and then having a sort of an email before you can get that. I want to do that for everything on your website, obviously, but for something that's that you're promoting, like a new report or something that's of perceived value to your audience, collecting that email address before you get it. And then also having I'm sorry, no, that's not the next slide. Here's a couple of examples of, you've all seen these before, but the little pop-up windows. These are good ways to collect email addresses. We practice what we preach. Here it is from our Beekeeper Group website. For example, when you go to our site, this is something you don't get for, I don't know how many seconds, but I want to say like 30 seconds after you start scrolling around. So you've already been there long enough to show that you have an interest in learning more from us, but it's not going to smack you right in the face as soon as you get there. So, and we do what we practice what we preach here. We ask for more information, obviously, because we're trying to get more business, but we also try to build data profiles from people after they sign up and get more information. We have follow-up with surveys. We follow up with additional information, so we know more about the people who are reaching out to us. Another way to do this is using social media to start building your list. And we talked about social media earlier, and I said about how we're moving, a lot of groups are starting to not move away from it, but also realize that they need to augment it with these email programs. So, but social media obviously is still a very valuable tool, and people spend a lot of time there. But we're trying to use social media now to drive people towards pages or social media ads that drive people towards pages, or the ads that drive people to give us an email address, so then we own that communication relationship, not this social media platform. So we've done things like build out advertising landing pages, or pages where we're really just trying the only goal is to sort of put people into sort of a funnel so we can get their email. Just, at the top of the funnel, we get their email address, and then every step along the way, we're getting more information, but you got to get people in the top of the funnel first. So social media has been valuable for us here for a number of our clients. So for example, this is an example of a landing page. When we do social media campaigns for clients or postings on social media, lots of times we try to drive people back to the organization's website, and not to the main website, but to a page where we're just going to collect that information. We're going to do everything we can to try to get an email address. So this is a commercial example, but it's the same sort of concept where you're driving people to what we call a landing page that is not the organization's main page, but it's set up to collect information, get them in the door with as little information is needed, so they take that first step over the line, then they're in your database, and then we can go back and we can always build that profile as we go forward. But this is a way to get people through the door. We also do social media advertising that does this, and this is a random example I found that shows what we're talking about, though, from Dot and Bow, which is just a furniture company, but we do this sort of thing for our clients as well. Where we'll do social media ads, and we'll use the targeting of Facebook. And like I said, they've made it difficult over the last several months to target anybody based on issues. And they've blocked a lot of what they call political advertising, which is really just advocacy advertising. But it's, like I said, they've changed it, but it's like someone else is always making these rules. But when we're able to do this, this is a good way to collect information, because we can put compelling calls to action, targeted, using all the social media targeting that's out there, and that's a whole other webinar into itself. Doing advertising, getting people with a message that resonates, driving people to, they can subscribe, they can submit their email right from Facebook, and then that's collected by the organization, and then they go into the Grassroots database, and then we do things to grow the profile once we get that information. So, for this example here, they're getting the first name, they're getting the name and the email address, and that's all they're getting. And then this organization, if this was an advocacy organization, they would use that to then build the data profile once they start bringing these people in. Another great tool to do this is what we call an ambassador program, or lots of times it's called a peer-to-peer program. So people that you have in your, and this goes back to sort of that sharing your story example, the people that you have in your database that are the champions, that care about your issue, that take your actions, that open your emails, that have shared a story, that have done all the things you've asked them to do. And you can run reports on most of these email platforms and advocacy platforms, and kind of see who those people are, and create a dedicated audience of those people. Those are great examples. Those are great people to go out and start an ambassador program. And what we mean by that is the people who are your champions are the best people to recruit other people to join the campaign, to take action, to become part of your Grassroots profiles, Grassroots database of activists. So, we work with groups to identify these people, give them tools to sign up other people. They are great. It's especially great if you're working in a professional society, or we do a lot in student networks, for example. Anytime you get one person who's a champion, and they're in a specific profession, they're going to be connected with so many other people in that profession. Or if they're students, they're going to be connected with so many other students on campus, or like a medical specialty practice group, or a medical college, for example. Like they're well connected with others, and if you can get one of them to be your champion, and you can, or several of them to be your champions, and you can get them to then recruit other people, you're leveraging the relationships they already have with that external network, and they've already been seen as a champion for you, because you know about them now. You have this data profile on them. They're not just an email address anymore. There's somebody who lives in this congressional district, lives in this state, has opened all our emails. They work here. This would be a great person to reach out to and see if they can help us grow our list. And then you can give them the tools, and you can give them the sample email messages. You can work with them on a one-to-one basis to do that, and drive people into your organization, and start collecting more names, and then starting the process of growing those names you've collected, and starting the process of getting more information on them. Another thing we've done in this to help grow lists is, and this goes back to the previous slide too, with the ambassador program, you can sort of have a number of ambassadors and have them compete against each other in a fun way. Is making it a game, gamification. This is another way to grow the data you already have, and getting new data. So people love little challenges. We've realized this is nothing new. You've seen this for a lot of campaigns do this. Going back to, I want to say, like Howard Dean campaign in 2004 was a big proponent of this, using these sort of tools, and and everyone's been using them ever since in a lot of ways. We set this up for one of our clients. We have an advocate leaderboard, and everybody on this site, and this is primarily aimed at vision care specialists, but everybody on this site who takes action gets points. So if they send a letter, to they're a member of Congress on the issue, if they sign a petition, if they recruit friends, if they post on social media. We track a lot of these things through this website, and then we have a leaderboard to show who's on top of the leaderboard. And then it's a friendly competition amongst a lot of people to see, you know, who's at the top and how the people come up and down. So gamification, this is a way to, again, you can use these sorts of tools, giving people points if they send a letter to Congress, to give people points if they recruit other people, to give people points if they complete a survey. So all these things that you're doing to give these people the points to be part of the leaderboard and rise up and down the leaderboard, they're also the things that are actually enriching their data profile on the back end for you, so you have more data that then you can then use to customize your outreach. You know, lastly, I'm just going to talk quickly about some of the third-party tools that are out there. We work with a bunch of these. We don't have any stake in any of these, so this is not a commercial for anybody. And I'm sure I've left a bunch of these off here, but everything I talked about today requires some sort of tool to make this happen, right? So knowing who opened your emails, who clicked your emails, just the basic programs to actually send out the email, to create the emails, to pull in specific data about people, doing sort of a mail merge, segmenting your list based on what you know about people. So you can set up an audience. These are the people who care about, you know, say, you know, diabetes research. Like we can segment just this list and send to just these people. There are all these sort of things I talked about need tools to do this. So these are a number of tools here on the right. Some you know, some of the ones at the top, like the phone to action and the fiscal notes and every action quorum, like they do a lot of they will match people to congressional districts. They will send the messages on your behalf. They will do basic list hygiene by, you know, taking off bounced emails, things like that. And then there's other ones like the constant contacts and the MailChimps. They are really more just the sending out of email, although they do have landing page capabilities for a lot of them. But in any case, all these tools can be tied together with your existing membership programs or other platforms you're already using. So if you're not using anything like this to send out emails, to manage your grassroots data, to help collect data and harvest it and start to harvest it from the actions that people are taking, whether what things they've told you or things they're doing, I highly encourage you to look into getting something, because you know, the last bullet here is something I'll leave you. If you're still doing this by importing and exporting lists out of another platform and then using Outlook or some sort of solution like that to send out your emails, you're doing it wrong, and you should look for a new solution, because a lot of things I've talked about here really require some sort of third-party tool, and they don't have to be crazy expensive, but you need something to do this. So that's all I have for today. Happy to take questions or hear your comments. Open up the floor. I don't see any questions in the.
Hi, Mike. So it looks like
question.
a few questions are coming in through the chat.
Okay.
What is your favorite advocacy tool platform?
That's a good question. It's also a loaded question, because we work I mean, as Beekeeper Group, we work with a lot of them. We don't really have a preferred solution or favorite platform. I'll say all the ones and I'm going to leave someone off the list here, but I'll say all the ones we've worked with that we like. We've done a lot of work with Fiscal Note, which has the voter voice platform. We've done a lot of work with Phone to Action. A lot of our clients use that. A lot of our clients use Every Action. And there's a number of other ones out there. Whoever asked that question, I'm happy to follow up offline and give you some contacts and some basic some basics on all of them. They all do essentially the same thing though. They all allow you to manage a list for you. They allow you to send out emails, blasts to your list. They allow you to create audiences where you can segment the list, just like I talked about. They allow you to do forms that collect additional information, and they all send out messages to elected officials. Like you can drive actions to members of Congress or people at the state level. So those are some of the ones that we use. I'm sure I've left others off the list. And I don't have none of them are my favorite because we use them all, and they all have different strengths depending on what we're trying to do. But I highly encourage you, if you don't have something like this, to shop around and see what would be best for you, because they are very valuable in building up your grassroots data, and then being actually able to use it. Because at the end of the day, we're not doing this because we want to have a nice database of grassroots activists. We want to have a list of people who care about our issues and who are willing to take action on behalf of them to their elected officials, or to spread the word about this issue. So we're looking for the action at the end of the day, not just having a nice list. And these tools are the conduit to make that happen.
Okay. Is it beneficial to ask for zip codes at sign up, or could that deter people from signing up?
What we like to say is you want to ask for as much information as you think you can get when people are signing up. But what I mean by that is, if you're like some of the examples I showed of a pop-up on a website, like if we're just trying to get an email address, if you put an email address and a zip code, or email address and a phone number, or a full, every field you add is going to make people less likely to complete that form. So they're only going to want to fill out as much as they think they need to complete the action that you're asking of them. So asking for an email address and zip code, personally, I don't think that's too much. Like if you're an advocacy website, or if you're an advocacy if you're doing this for an advocacy campaign, because I don't feel that that person would say like, this is really intrusive, you're asking a lot, because the zip code gives you a lot. The email and the zip code as the first thing. The email address really only tells you that someone filled out an email form, but a zip code at least puts them on a map, right? And it probably puts them in maybe not 100% puts them in a congressional district, but pretty closely puts them in a congressional district. So right off the bat, you have a good sense of who this person who just filled out the form is. So if you can get it, I would ask for it. One thing I didn't touch on here in this presentation is when you're asking if you have a question like that and you're not sure what to do, a lot of these tools that I just talked about, they allow you to do what's called A/B testing, where you could have two different versions of the form delivered to audiences as they come in. So half the people may get a page that says, just give us your email address. The other half says, give us your email address and a zip code. And if you can measure the two against each other, sort of like a random sample, as people are coming to the website, they get served one or the other, or if they click through a link, they get one or the other. And then you can measure, okay, if we're seeing a really low completion rate on the zip code ask, then we know we're asking too much, and then maybe we get rid of that, just ask for the email address, and then use some of the things that I talked about earlier to complete that data profile. So those are a couple ways to do it. But the quick answer is, I don't think it's too much if you're doing an advocacy campaign. I wouldn't lead, and and it also depends on, is this the first time they're ever hearing of you? Is this the first time they're seeing you? If they already know about you and if it's been on your list before, I don't think it's too much at all.
So the next question is, when you roll out tactics across your website or social platforms, do you intend to keep them open forever? What metrics do you use to see if something is working well, or when to bail?
That's a good question. I think in terms of forever, I mean, nothing's forever on a website, right? So if it really becomes, I think the question is it a competing resource? So if you have I'm trying to think how to say this, like if you have something on your website and it's not performing and it's taking up valuable real estate, that's when it's time to reassess whether or not we should have this here. If we're, I'm trying to think of an example. If you had a large portion of your website that was dedicated to collecting full first name, last name, email, city, state, zip, and like you were not getting a lot of completions on that on the homepage. Maybe it's time to use that real estate for something else, and maybe reduce the ask, have more compelling content to drive people just to give an email address, for example. So I think the basic gist of that question is, I think you should always be assessing everything you're doing. And if just because something was working for a while and it stopped working, doesn't mean just because something works for a while doesn't mean it's going to work forever. And if it stops working, you need to reassess, and maybe on a website, homepage real estate is very valuable. Think about ways to maximize that. Social media strategies, just because you're using one message or one video or one set of images, they're not always going to be effective. So always assessing how the materials you create are driving signups or driving actions or driving everything that you want to measure. And if they stop performing, then you need to reassess. So nothing in this business, in this industry, in terms of advocacy and messaging, nothing works forever online. Your champions see it and they get bored with it, and if it's not working with your target audiences after a while, then you really need to reassess and try something new.
Okay, so when you're working in a specific disease area, other than through social media, how do you suggest reaching or targeting highly engaged advocates to recruit others who are interested in engaging with that disease area?
Okay, so with the question was, without using social media, how do you engage with others in a specific disease area?
Yeah, like other than through social media, is there a
Yeah.
way to kind of recruit or encourage others to recruit?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's gotten harder on social media anyway. So this is what's driving a lot of this conversation uh, on social media and in other platforms as well. Other advertising platforms are making it harder to advertise on advocacy issues and also healthcare related issues. With everything going on with COVID, there's a lot of advertising now that's not letting you target anybody by any specific health condition anymore. You used to be able to target, for example, for a lot of the platforms we work with, you used to be able to target people who had heart disease. And we would do that for some of the groups that we worked with to drive them towards some sort of petition or action. Not so much, and what happens is that was being abused by people who were selling products, and then it just became to those groups, and it became too much. So those advertisers just sort of pulled out from that whole market. So, but to answer your question, so it's, if you're not using social media and you want to recruit people on a specific disease state, and you already part of the question, I think, was you already have a list of people. I think what I would do is think about a way to obviously to leverage the people that you have already in some sort of ambassador program or peer-to-peer program. Because like I said in a couple slides back, people usually are running communities of people who are similar to them. So a profession or people who have a specific disease state often are connected with others who have that through, maybe not in person, but they're connected on maybe message boards, or they're on a private, this is social media, so I don't want to get too into it, but like but I think it speaks to what we're talking about in this, sort of a private Facebook group, for example. People run in their own digital circles, in person and digital circles, around issues that matter to them. So identifying your champions, then having some sort of call to action that they can promote within those communities, I think is a great way to start. So if there was a bill in Congress or some sort of petition, or even doesn't have to be a specific bill, even if it's just, we need more research on this issue, we need something to happen. If these people who you identify in your list, hopefully they are also connected to others who care about that issue. So giving them the tools, giving them a recruitment message, giving them a landing page to drive people to, giving them an action alert that they can share, like leveraging their connections to drive people back to your website, back to your activities, to recruit those people into under your umbrella. I think that's probably one of the best ways. I mean, it's one leg of a strategy, but I think that's probably a strong one to start with. Is if you already have people you know are champions, using them to go out and grab other, recruit other people, and then empowering them to do so by giving them the messaging and the websites and the tools that they need to do it. I mean, they're obviously not going to set it up themselves. You're going to give it to them and drive them back to a website that you control, but they're the messenger of that message.
Do you have any suggestions on survey tools and how to integrate them with some of the third-party tools you talked about earlier?
So survey tools, there's a lot of off-the-shelf survey tools that are out there, like a Survey Monkey, and then there's also, we use Google Forms sometimes. Just setting up a Google form is really easy to set up. But what happens with those tools is usually you get a data set, but it's not tied into your Grassroots database, so you have to import it in there, which can be done, and it's not too much work. But so the best survey tools we think are the ones where these platforms you're using already to send out your messages can be used as set up landing pages that are surveys on those. So for example, if you're using like a MailChimp, for example, you can set up a survey on MailChimp and send it out to people. And as people fill out the survey, it goes right into their MailChimp profile, right into their database profile on that platform. Or if you're using something like, I want to say like a phone to action or every action, some of these other tools, you can set up a landing page, a registration page, and you have a custom form in there. And that custom form is where you collect that data. So you can have any question you want as a custom form. It's on a landing page that's hosted by the same people who handle your advocacy tool set, and that goes directly into their profile. So I don't have a favorite, but I think my favorite is the one that has the least amount of steps to get that data into that same profile that you're building on your Grassroots person. So most of the tools that I talked about do that. We'll have ways to do that. You may have to, get a little bit of training to set up custom forms and custom fields, and then create a form that uses those custom fields, and then drive people to that page from an email blast. As they fill out that survey, they're filling out those custom forms, which then get added to their database profile on that same system. So that's my favorite one. It's the one where it's all under one one technology, and you don't have to import and export from different things, because it's that way it's more seamless, and then you can just keep it running. You don't have to keep going back and downloading and uploading. It's just the data gets added as it happens.
Yeah, work smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
Could you talk about resources needed to develop the story collection sites you featured?
Mm-hmm. Sure. There's a number of ways to do that. I can talk about the way we've done it, and it's not the only way to do it. But we work with the groups that we work with. We build out the sites. This is gonna get a little technical here. They're on WordPress. So, and there is a tool called AddPipe, ADDPIPE, and it's a story collection tool that you can just drop into a WordPress site or actually any other site, and it handles all the collection of stories and recordings and collecting of the data that comes with it. We integrate it with the WordPress sites that we use. We integrate it with, I'm gonna get too technical here, but a Gravity Forms plugin to make it all look nice, and it all feeds into the WordPress backend. So like I said, everything is going into the same database as everything else. But there's a lot of ways to do it. That's the way we do it. The tool I talked about, AddPipe, is probably the best thing to look at to get a sense of what you can do, because that can be pretty much dropped onto most websites right away. And then the devil's in the detail with the configurations, but the initial setup is pretty simple.
How would you recommend operationalizing a closed member list? So something that only members are on, and you don't join through a website.
So is the question how to grow the data profile on these people, or what do you mean by what's the, I'm sorry, what are they trying to do with the list?
How, yeah, how to best use a closed member list. So they're only joining, they're already, known advocates. So how to best communicate with them and grow the database info with,
Yeah, so
since they really only have business information.
okay, that's a good question. So the thanks for clarifying. So in this scenario, you're not trying to recruit more people to the list because these are members. You already have them. You already have some of the basics on them. So, but what you want to do is get a deeper profile on them. So I mean, it depends. I guess a lot of this depends on how big the list is. If it's thousands of people, or if it's hundreds of people, it'd be a little strategies would be a little different. But you want to do to some of the things I talked about in the sort of the midsection of this presentation, where you're driving people to pages um, and trying to collect more information about and this group would be more apt to fill it out because they're ideally, they're on this list because they're active members of an organization. It's a closed list. So, but you still want to get as much information from them as possible. So I'd start by looking at who's opening the emails too, because we have lots of groups where we have a closed email list, and there's board members, and there's high level people who you think would be very active, and they never open anything and never click on anything. So just getting a sense, I think starting with a sense of like, actually, you have this closed list. How active is it? Are people actually opening the emails and clicking on anything you send them? Lots of times you're surprised how inactive a list of people who you think are your champions is. After that, it's kind of what I talked about, thinking about what information do I need, think about the goals of having this list. What do I need from these people to deliver on my advocacy goals, and what do I need to collect from them to be able to do that? So making sure you may just have their work address. Maybe you might need their home address to get matched to their congressional districts, because if everybody lives in one city, they're probably spread out across multiple jurisdictions, like in the DC area, for example. If you just had DC addresses, you would miss out everybody who's in Maryland, Virginia, all those congressional districts. So getting that information, more information about the specific issues that they care about. A lot of this depends on, very specific to the organization, but just looking at what they do already and what you don't have, and then developing sort of a plan to get the rest of it through targeted actions, surveys, things like that. It's a little different because they're, like I said, they should be involved because they're members, and they're they're not just people you've found who've taken some action because a friend sent it to them. These are people who are vested in some way. So you should be able to get those higher level asks, hopefully. So this is where that share your story thing could come in, or using them as champions to recruit other people to a non-member list, like a grassroots list. So those are just some of the things.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Well, we're just about at time. Thank you everyone for submitting all those questions. I think we had a great conversation. And thank you so much, Mike, for your time and your expertise in going over harnessing all this data.
Well, thanks for having me. It was my pleasure.
Thanks so much, everyone, and have a great afternoon.